just want to give you a basic structure of story and how to write a story. This is going to be pretty obvious, I think, because all of you have been hearing stories, reading stories, telling stories, watching stories on film all of your lives, right? Okay? But there's certain things I just want you to be aware of. First, stories start with stasis. Okay? They start with what is normal. Alright? Let's think of an example. The hardest part in this class is thinking of an example that we've all read or seen. And since I don't watch enough movies, I always end up coming up with Cinderella. Okay, I've not seen any Cinderella movies, and it's been, how old am I, over 50 years since I read it. But, you know, we all know Cinderella, right? Okay, so stasis. What is normal in Cinderella? When the story opens, what is happening? What would you consider normal? So she's living, thank you kindly, she's living with her stepmother, her two stepsisters, and they are forcing her to do all the housework, right? She's sweeping ash out of the fireplace, that's what I remember. Okay? So that's normal. Then what happens is a trigger. Something happens. Okay, so normal in Cinderella is she's staying at home, doing the housework, the stepsisters and the stepmother are all going off having fun, enjoying themselves, and in this case they're going to the ball. Right? So the trigger, the critical point in your story, the crisis, the conflict. We talked about this with poetry. In Cinderella, what happens, the trigger, the thing that happens that changes everything is Cinderella's at home, sweeping up the ashes out of the fireplace, and who shows up?
Fairy godmother.
Fairy godmother. Fairy godmother is the trigger. Because the fairy godmother showed up, everything changed. Okay, now if the fairy godmother had not shown up, what would have happened? The stepsisters would have come home from the ball, and Cinderella would still be sweeping ashes, right? Okay, so, and then what happens after that is the rising action. Okay, rising action. Now, rising action is basically surprise after surprise after surprise hitting your main character. Okay, obstacles that you're throwing at your main character. Things that are obstructing your main character. That can be, it can be nature, it can be another character, it can be disease, it can be lots of things, okay? Things that are stopping your main character from getting what they want. Basically, your main character desires something. Okay, remember this. Okay, your main character wants something, wants it hard, wants it bad, okay? And something is always coming at your main character to stop that from happening. Okay, that's the rising action. I don't know. I don't remember what happened in Cinderella. She went to the ball, right? Okay, so the fairy godmother turns the mice into horses. You guys have seen this more recently than I have, or read it. And the mice get turned into horses. Pumpkin gets turned into the carriage.
Bippity boppity boo.
Bippity bippity boppity boo. I don't know what that is, but okay. Sounded good. So, were there some men? Like some, you know, what are they called? The people who ride, who drove the horses?
The dogs. It was the dogs. Yeah.
All the dogs got turned into coachmen?
Yeah.
In the movie, yes.
There were no dogs in the story that I remember. Actually, I think, well, now that doesn't, who did get turned into? Maybe some, I think maybe some cockroaches or something got turned into horses and mice got turned into the coachmen.
In other versions, it's more the mice, and the other one, it's like the bugs and stuff. It just depends on what's in the situation.
So what version you're watching, basically, or what version you're reading. Okay, so, but basically, and there's a big, big thing that's happening that she has to remember all the time. It's like if you are, a perfect example is actually a true story. This woman named Nancy Punches, she lived in Washington, and there was a huge flood. She lived on 8 acres in a double wide trailer up at the top, up a hill. And her road was below her. And there was this huge flood that came from miles away. This river had never overflowed its banks and reached this land. It had never even, it had covered the interstate a few times. But she woke up the next morning and her entire yard was this high in water. Okay, so literally, what is the thing that's throwing at her is the storm, the rising water, the rising river. And what she wanted, what she desired more than anything in the world was to survive the flood and keep her dogs alive. She was a breeder. She had 15 dogs and 5 puppies. Okay? Spoiler alert, she's alive. Okay, spoiler alert is a great essay. Most of the dogs did not make it, but the story was great. I mean, it's an essay, it's a true story, it's great. You know, the rising action is, you know, a new thing happens. She's getting her dogs out of the kennels, getting them into the double wide with her. The water's still rising, that's an obstacle, okay? Her want is to get these dogs alive. She managed to get 5 of them, and puppies. 10 drowned. First thing. Rising action, obstacle. She's in her double wide, debris hits the outside of the trailer and blocks the door so she cannot get out. Water has come up through the floor by this point of the double wide. It's rising. Okay, that's an obstacle. The water continues to rise. That's an obstacle. She has to figure out how to keep the puppies alive. 2 of them drowned. She finds a shipping container styrofoam, puts the other 3 in there. They're floating around. They're still alive. She has to figure out how to get herself higher and higher off the ground, how to get the dogs higher and higher off the ground. She gets up on the counter, water's rising. And it's a very great essay because it describes the water going one blind at a time, one blind at a time. Up, 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 up. She's up on the counter. The water's up to her knees. And it's December. She's freezing. Okay, then the bookshelf falls over and she climbs up on the bookshelf, and by this point she's about this far from the ceiling. Okay, so this is the rising action and the obstacles and her desire all rolled up in one. Her desire to stay alive and to keep the dogs alive. The rising action is the water rising and obstacles coming at her all over the place. Everything just keeps going wrong. She lives. 3 of the puppies lived. I'll give you this, okay? Yeah. In Cinderella, there's a big obstacle that's not very obvious, but what does the fairy godmother tell her she has to do? There you go, it's the ticking clock. It's the ticking clock. Most action movies have this going on, right? Ticking clock. I don't watch TV that much, but think of any show that has a bomb in a schoolhouse and the heroes are trying to figure out which schoolhouse it's in. And the clock is ticking. They know it's going to go off in 2 hours, right? That's being thrown at them, right? Okay, so it's like ticking clock. So, she's at the ball, she's having fun. Now here's the thing about stasis and conflict is one of 2 things happen. The person is having a normal life, something happens to change that life. This thing can be changing to good or changing to bad. Okay? In Cinderella's case, it's changing to good, right? So everything she does is to stay at good. Now, most of the movies you watch, what happens is it changes to bad. I mean, think of, again, I don't watch that many movies, but think of a horror movie, okay? I think when I was a kid, I watched the one where everybody dies except for the babysitter. There's a bunch of kids having sex or making out, and the babysitter is the only one who's not doing that, and it's Halloween, or dude with the mask comes in, kills everybody. It's Halloween or Jason, one or the other.
Halloween.
Oh. Halloween? Okay. It's only been 40 years since, it's been over 40 years since I saw that. Okay, but I still remember everybody died except the babysitter. I remember that. Okay, but so everything's good for her, right? Everything's good for the kids, everything's good for the babysitter, right? Everything's good for the kids. Trigger is, what's his name, the Halloween dude? Is it
Michael Myers.
Is that his real name or his actor name?
That's the character.
Oh, really? Michael Myers? Okay, so Michael Myers comes in and starts killing everybody. The babysitter's goal, her want, her desire is to stay alive, right? Also to keep the kids alive. Any movie you see, that's important, right? What's that, Jurassic Park? The guy that jumped out of the car and ran to the outhouse, he died. The guy that stayed with the kids and kept the kids alive and walked them all through the park, he's alive, kids are alive, right? That's the desire, to keep yourself alive, to keep your kids alive. Okay? So in Michael Myers' show and in Jurassic Park, the rising action is all the stuff that keeps coming at them. And like the dinosaurs attacking them, or the electric fence in Jurassic Park that the kid climbs and dies and has to be given CPR. Okay. So that's bad, is what I'm saying. Most of your stories, most of your movies, something bad happens, and the entire rising action is the characters trying to get back to normal, which for them was good. In the case of Cinderella, something good happened. So the rising action is all trying to not get back to normal. It's trying to stay in the good, okay? Those are the two things that are going to happen, right? Usually it's the bad thing that happens. In the story that we read today, was it a good or a bad thing that happened? It's kind of complex, really.
Yeah.
Oh man, complexity in a story, you can't have that. Okay, we'll talk about it. So, rising action, clock. So I remember, clock is striking, boom, boom. She's still at the ball. She's running. Is the prince chasing her? Come back, you're the love of my life. Okay, prince is chasing her. She's running down the steps. Shoe falls off. These are all the various obstacles. She's got to get away from the prince before she turns back into into her raggedy clothes.
Yes.
Yeah, her raggedy clothes covered in ashes. Okay, and she's got to get out of there before her carriage turns into a pumpkin and her little men turn into mice. Okay, so she's running. She loses her shoe, and but she gets out, right? Okay, I guess she's hoping the fairy godmother shows back up again, because she just ran to get back to what was not good. Right? So, but we get here, the rising action then is, will they get together, the love of their lives, this great story, or are they going to meet again, and is everything going to turn out well? Right? So, the prince is, yes, he grabs a glass slipper, and he goes all through the kingdom looking for the love of his life, right? Who fits in this shoe? Okay, I don't remember exactly what happens to him, but I assume he goes to a lot of houses and finds nothing. Okay, and then he gets to the stepsisters and the mother, and I don't know where the father is, but
He died, yeah.
Oh, he died. Okay, that poor girl.
Yeah.
Her mother's dead. Her father's dead. Okay. Boy, fairy tales. So he gets to their house, and in the Grimm's fairy tale. In the original, one of the sisters tries on the shoe, it does not fit. She takes us on and cuts off her toes. And the shoe fits then, and she goes off with the prince. He goes to the back of the horse and she's riding off. And they pass the mother's grave, and some birds come up and say to the prince, check the shoe, it's full of blood. Check the shoe, it's full of blood. I think it rhymed, but it was something like that. Mm-hmm. So the prince stops and goes, oops, yeah, this shoe is full of blood. Back we go. Okay, this is rising action. This is obstacles being thrown at Cinderella. Okay, this is things not working out for her. And this is us suffering through this tension. Is the prince going to realize he's made a mistake? All right, gets back. The other sister tries on the shoe, doesn't fit, cuts off her heel. Same thing happens. Gets on the back of the horse, rides off, gets to the graveyard, and the birds say, check the shoe, it's full of blood. Check the shoe, it's full of blood. So again, check the shoe, full of blood. Back to the house. Now, does the stepmother try on the shoe? I don't remember that happening.
In some versions she
Some
does,
versions she
in
does.
other versions she doesn't. It just kind of depends.
Now, let's go with the version that she doesn't. Because how many more things can you cut off, for Pete's sakes? So then Cinderella. No, does the prince say Cinderella try it on, or does she?
One of the people that's there heard Cinderella because the stepmother locked her in her room, and then they heard. They was like, "Is there anybody else in here?" and stuff like that. And then she has the other slipper because the other one breaks.
Okay, so this is one of the obstacles then. She's locked in her room. They don't even know she's there. So that's one of the obstacles, and we're all on the edge of our seat going, are they going to hear her make a noise? Are they going to know she's there? And somehow or another they figured out, and I'm sure the stepsisters all yell at her and say, no, no, no. But then Prince slips the shoe on, and then what happens? At this point where everything at the house, everybody's trying on the shoe except for Cinderella, this is the climax of the story. This is the highest tension of the story. Okay? Finally, they do try on, they get the shoe on to Cinderella, everything's beautiful, they live happily ever after. Is that how it ends? Okay, so in some versions, maybe not in all versions. Okay, we have, here we have basically the climax has happened, then the thing that happens that changes everything, okay? Because she got on the shoe, the world has changed for her. So then after that, we have nothing but resolution. Resolution and denouement. Nice little French word for you. Denouement. Everything is good. And the story ends there because we don't care, right? We're bored by good. We're bored by happy ever after. We want conflict, right? Okay, this is the basic structure of a story. And you will notice this over and over again in stories. Pay attention when you watch movies. You'll see it in movies. Even children's movies. There's so much conflict in children's movies. I mean, it's like, whenever I watch a children's movie, I just have to keep repeating myself, this is a children's movie, it's going to end up happy. Except for Old Yeller. Okay, most of the time it ends up happy in children's movies. Whew. Okay, so but this is your basic structure. This is what they call, it's pretty much what we all say. It's also what is often called the Pixar structure. Okay? Pixar structure is this thing. Every day we did this. Every day we had breakfast. Every day we went out to the garden and hoed the garden. Every day we did this. And then one day, and that's the trigger, and then one day something changed. And the something that changed was this thing. Okay, that's your normal. Then something happened, trigger. And because of this thing happened. And because of this other thing happened. And because of this other thing happened. But then, this thing happened and everything went back to normal. It's pretty obvious if you watch movies. It works. The reason movies are bestsellers is because that structure works. The reason books are bestsellers is because that structure works.